All right, day 8. What is your world's biggest secret? Well, in my world of Roanarch, I'm going to reveal 3 secrets. A couple of them have already mentioned in previous videos, but I'm going to go over them a little bit more detail. The first secret, that the world known as Roanarch, Rowan, the peasant king, never existed. Second secret, of the 3 gods that are left, the triad, the 3 kneeling gods, the dark god, the red god, the white god, the god of shadow and stone, the god of blood and fire, the god of winter and bone. One of those 3 caused all the other gods and the primordials to do battle in what's known as Gods Down. One of them is responsible. The other 2 knew it. No one listened, and they are now locked in a battle, but one of a Cold War battle between them, because the other 2 are afraid that the third one knows their weaknesses and will try to turn those 2 against each other. Lastly, dragons in my world do exist. People are currently worshiping them, pulling them out of their desperation, out of their depression, to return back to the world, because dragons in my world had suffered a great loss. In effect, they've been infected with a serious disease, and their eggs do not come to term as other dragons, but actually as other lizard type folk in my world, which is where kobolds and lizard men and dragonborn come from. And so there are communities actively trying to bring dragons back, to return back into the world from being locked away, to become humanity's new gods. So let's start with the biggest one, Roanarch. Rowan, the peasant king, never existed in my world, even though when the 12 houses gather together to talk about how society should run, they use this individual known as Rowan as a calling card to blame others that they themselves are trying to ruin society. So when one house tries to assert control over something over the other houses, they blame, you are not supporting the tenets of Rowan, and you are you're a rebel. You are acting against society. You are not in support of our country and our way of thinking. And they use that as a weapon against each other, even though they themselves are trying to work against everyone else. All right. The 12 houses, each house represents a portion that takes care of a portion of society. So you have like the treasury, the house that handles the treasury. You have a house that handles craftsmen and guild work, that they create things. You have a house that are miners. You have a house that battles. You have a house that are spies. And so each house represents their own power, but they require the use of other industries. For example, you would think that the house of like spies or the house of battle would be the most superior, but someone has to feed them. So the house of the harvest is the house that, an army, survives on its stomach. You have that treasury. They pay for the weapons that the house of battle can use. And then the weapons have to be forged by yet another house. Disrespect any of those other houses, and guess what? Your house falls. So there's this weird balancing act that each house wants to make good with all the other houses to become superior, yet those other houses don't want you being more powerful than they are. So, but this balancing act came about by, the peasant king Rowan, that never existed, yet they Everyone in the political arena calls out their name and blames everybody else for being, you know, anti-society. You're trying to bring down the fall of the houses, and we're going to go right back into the chaos that we came from. Number two, the second secret. Um, what was my second secret? Oh, the second secret about the battle of the gods. There are only three kneeling gods left, and some picture them as kneeling out of defeat. Others see them kneeling, ready to stand to take the place of the other gods. Some see the kneeling gods as kneeling out of guilt of what they've done. Others see the kneeling gods kneeling over the corpses of the other gods, because those other gods should have been struck down. You have some picturing the kneeling gods, picking over the corpses of, the dead primordials and the dead elders. And then you have others that are kneeling out of honor to society and humanity. I wanted to create a pantheon of gods for my world, and I didn't want it to be too complicated. So these three kneeling gods, there's very little written books about them. Like, there's no Bible of the three gods. Even their traditions are few and far between, allowing those three, one or all of those three gods, to be picked together by the player characters. Gods do not have dominion over every little portion. Like, they don't have dominion over the earth and air and love and honor and dreams, and they don't have dominion over that. I wanted there to be this weird sense of chaos, that when a player character starts to delve into the divine or into becoming an arcane caster, that the rules that apply to them set by these elder gods no longer exist, and therefore the power of magic is somewhat disrupted. And in order to contain it, you kind of need to go with these kneeling gods, the triad, to control it and to use it for yourself. But now you're paying homage to beings that no one really understands their motivations. So one of the three kneeling gods is subtle and evil and manipulative, and the other two are the last vanguard against these machinations. Yet the last two have to work together, and neither of the last two agrees with how this should go about. So you have this triple conflict, this social, political interaction amongst the gods themselves. And in my world, actually, when people cast divine magic, one or more of the three kneeling gods will actually arrive and be seen in the background, even when low-level casters cast spells. I wanted my gods to walk the earth. Lastly, I've always liked the idea of a battle with the gods, but I didn't want it clear. Like, I didn't want an Ares, the god of war, and everyone knows who it is. A player character may say, no, the god of winter and bone is the god that my character's going to worship, and everything I do is nice and good, and then find out that this is the one that created it through the world and the chaos itself. Lastly, I wanted gods that weren't specified to like a certain type of alignment or goal or anything. I wanted there to be a giant size gap space for player characters to create their own thing. Lastly, dragons. Not very many of them, and they don't take part in the world greatly, but they hold vast power. They do exist in my world. They can change the landscape, and there are huge communities out there, human and humanoid alike, that want to bring them back out of their depression and cure them. And one of the first adventures that I was going to run in my world was that an alchemist or an apothecary or something actually found out what could be a cure for the laying of eggs for dragons, and this would spell godhood slash devastation for humanity when dragons knew finally find out that when their eggs hatch, um, another live dragon will take its place. Now, in my world, when a dragon's egg hatches, inside of it are actually could be dozens to hundreds of little kobolds, and those kobolds live and learn, and then they shed their skin. And in that shedding of skin, it's almost like a chrysalis, and they can then grow on to become other things. So they can become uh, Yanti and Naga and Lizardmen and Dragonborn, and each it is not known how, but during a specific shedding period, they will shed their skin and become a different type of lizard type being in my world. So scaled folk have a connection and a common history. So kobolds have a history with the Yanti and lizard folk and dragonborn and many of the other myriad types of lizard type beings in my world, but they're not the only ones. As a matter of fact, there's also um, large portions of humanity who have suffered so much from in the hands of angry and uncaring gods. Look at dragons like, well, this is the physical representation of power and loyalty and, in effect, like common sense. We need protection. We need to live. We're tired of living in the nooks and crannies of the world. We want to come out in the world and not be assaulted. And dragons are where that power comes from. So no, everyone does not need to be a warlock or even to have a dragon as a patron or be a sorcerer to have dragon blood. You can be, a wizard or a cleric or what have you. That just happens to be the physical manifestation of where your power comes from, including dragon knights and paladins and that kind of thing. Again, I wanted to create a big giant hole for player characters to fill with their own imagination and an excuse to add in these things, these elements. What if can the dragons become divine? Could enough mortal worshippers turn dragons into giving birth to one dragon egg with 5 heads? Tiamat, would that be possible? I don't know. I would love to, run this setting and see if it's possible that the player characters actually are protecting the newborn dragon godling known as Tiamat from being killed by the other gods or other houses or something. Anyway, it's day 8. It's about hashtag my 30-day world. Of course, it's in support of the Kickstarter for A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin by Absolute Tabletop. I am a contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. There are the links below. You can check that out. My little baby is the cinematic environs. Why is it always backwards? Anyway, it actually says Blasted Lands. Whatever. It's the latest book. Blasted Lands, Arctic reaches, everything. Just to using that third pillar. That's my thing. Using that third pillar, the third pillar of the environment. Please follow along. Thank you for being a member of my YouTube channel, hanging out with me. By all means, comment below. Go over to Absolute Tabletop. Join in my 30-day world. Tell people about your world. Use your favorite social media, even if it's making other videos, and let people know about your world. And by the way, thank you very much. I'm DBJ, the Vabrian Jackson, and I'm out. Thank you.